Welcome to Cyclone InCYders. I'm Taylor Mankle along with Ben Olson here as we're going to break down some Iowa State athletics for you here this evening. And we're going to start off with football and then jump into other headlines as we go through Iowa State athletics here late on in this semester. So obviously the big thing that's happened since we last talked, the spring game took place. And we want to kind of break down a little bit of the spring game for you. The offense defeated the defense 50-44. And Ben, before I ask you kind of who stuck out in this game, what you saw out of this game, we want to explain to you how they got to a 50-44 score. So it's not just a normal game, obviously. You get to score points in a bunch of different ways, both on the offense and defensive side of the ball. So the offensive scoring key is as follows. Touchdowns worth 6 points. Field goals worth 3 points. A run over 15 yards is worth 3 points. A pass over 20 yards is worth 3 points. First down is 1 point, and a point after touchdown is 1 point as well. Defensive scoring keys, you can get a big 12 points with the defense got in this game for turnover, for a touchdown. A fumble recovery is worth 7, interceptions worth 5, 3 and outs worth 5, a block or missed field goal is worth 3, sack is worth 2, a stop on a 2-point conversion is worth 2 points, a tackle for loss is 1 point, a hold the offensive series to 0 points, basically a stop, is worth 1 point, and safeties are 3 points. So there's a whole bunch of ways to score different ways in this football game. And obviously it was a close game, 50-44, so a couple outstanding performances from both sides of the ball. Who stuck out to you, Ben?
So on the offensive side of the ball, I think that, and this might be the obvious choice, but Mike Warren stood out to me. I mean, he had both the touchdowns, the rushing touchdowns for the offense. And it was really good to see him get back out there looking in top form again after that slump last season.
Yeah.
And, I mean, with the offensive line, it's kind of a big question mark. But the big thing for me was he was definitely running hard.
Yeah.
And you can never take too much from the spring game. But he was giving his all out there, and he was holding on to the ball tight, which is what we're going to need to see this season. And on the defensive side, again, you might call it cliche, but Joel Lanning with the pick six, 12 points for the defense.
Yeah.
If you look at the other plays, that was obviously the big play. Sure. He's definitely got some stuff that he's going to have to break down, and still the technique is not quite there, which who can blame him? Yeah. But, I think he's still got that natural ability to be a leader and, still make plays, even if he's on the other side of the ball. And we saw that in that touchdown play. So I think that's something to look for coming from him.
No, absolutely. I love what you said about both of those guys. Starting with Mike Warren, he finished the game with 4 rushes for 28 yards as a whole, 2 touchdowns there, averaged 7 yards a pop. So that was good out of Mike Warren for sure. And he was running hard. And, of course, everybody's talking about the sophomore slump, if you will, from Mike Warren. But it'll really be good if they can implement him to a higher degree than they did last year.
Yeah.
With him and David Montgomery, the 1-2 punch would be huge in Big 12 play. So it was great to see him running with confidence and maybe gaining some confidence from having the fans see him out there, having them see him score touchdowns again has got to be good for his confidence. And Joel Lanning, man, that was poetic. I was working for Cyclones.tv over the weekend, and they were having a mic'd up session with Matt Campbell during that play. So one of my coworkers was listening to him while that happened. He's like, man, that's poetic, isn't it? Jacob Park got picked off by Joel Lanning, then he returned it for a touchdown. So that was awesome. And I agree, he's got to clean up the edges a little bit, Joel Lanning does, but he's going to play. The fact of the matter is the linebacking core for Iowa State football isn't at the top of the line across the Big 12, so he's going to get some playing time out there, and we'll see how he does against some bigger competition than just his offense that he knows pretty well, you could say. I think some outstanding performances that I saw, some players that you might not have heard of too much. Marcel Spears Jr., he's someone who really stuck out to me in this game as I was calling it on KURE Sports. If you want to hear the call, feel free to go to our SoundCloud at KURE885. But Marcel Spears, he was all over the field. 6 total tackles, 3 on his own, 3 assisted, 2 sacks as well for a total of 15 yards lost. He was all over the field. So make sure to keep an eye out for number 42 this upcoming season. He did a really good job. And I think it was good to see Crowney get a bunch of carries in this game, obviously with Kene Nwangwu with that injury. Didn't get to see him in this game. We didn't see David Montgomery in this game, so Crowney got a lot of carries at the running back position. And who knows? You never know what happens during the season. He might have to take that load a little more early or furthermore throughout the season. But as always, I like what Matt Campbell's done with kind of turning the spring game into a whole festivities for all these Cyclone fans. And it was a good turnout out there.
15,000, I think they said, in attendance. And they had a lot going on outside the stadium as well. You know, the Cyclone locker room was selling, and I know there was tons of activities for the kids. So I really like what Coach Campbell has done to bring this. And I was going to add, if you're looking at the units as a whole, I think I was really impressed with the defensive performance. Before we talked about that scoring key, when I first saw the score, I'm sure everyone was hoping it actually was 50-44. But I think, it's really a positive going forward, and we got to see the progress that this team actually had during the spring.
For sure, there was definitely a bunch of progress, and that was such a big stage for this game. Now, after this spring game, Ben, I've asked you this question before. I'll ask you again. Where do you think Iowa State needs to improve most going into the regular season?
Heading into the regular season, I still think that the offensive line is a big question mark.
Okay, yeah.
At the beginning of the spring game, right off the bat, they looked a little rattled, even against our own defense, got pinned kind of deep. And so I know that there's been a couple young guys who've started to stood out in the spring. So I really want to see how Coach Campbell's going to choose who his starting five is there. And if we can get a solid line, then I think the offense is going to catch up to where maybe the defense showed that they were after the spring. Yeah,
especially when it comes to run blocking. I think that's got to be a huge key for this offensive line. They looked comfortable when they were pass blocking from Jacob Park. Granted, this is pass blocking in the spring game, and you can't even tackle the quarterback, so you can't do too much there. But they looked a lot more comfortable in pass protection rather than making holes for the running backs. So if they can improve that, that'll be a huge part to this team. I was looking at the other side of the ball, the defensive line, how that was going to improve after a couple losses on the defensive line as well. And many say, and I know some of the Cyclone coaching staff has said, you got to anchor your defense from that front line on the defensive side with the defensive line. To be determined if that can improve to a high enough level to make a difference come Big 12 play. But who do you think, give me somebody not like Alan Lazard, not Jacob Park, not top of the line, who do you think someone is going to overperform this year that maybe people aren't looking out for?
Person that stood out to me is Chase Allen at the tight end position. I don't know what his stats were, if you can read them there.
Yeah, he had one reception for 15 yards, a couple more targets as well.
But the one big reception, I remember he was breaking a lot of tackles on that play.
Gave Joe Lannon a good stiff arm to the face.
Oh, yeah. The whole tight end group as a whole, I thought, was starting to show we were seeing more from them, which is going to be big, obviously, because I don't even know if Iowa State's had tight ends in the past, it seems like. So, he's one that stood out to me, and I think he'll continue to grow as the season goes on.
Yeah, it was something last year. I can't remember the exact statistic. I'm pretty sure the tight ends last year got 8 total targets and only 3 receptions.
Yeah.
So there's not much room to go down in the tight end department. It'll be very interesting to see if Chase Allen can take them up a little bit more and give them some more production from the tight end position. So, Ben, again, I want to ask you this. Just see if your mind has changed after the spring game at all. End of the season next year, what is the record of Iowa State?
I did say 6-6, and I'm an Iowa State fan. I'm always hopeful, and I still think I'm going to hold to that. They looked. I saw flashes of last season, sort of more with the moves we made. Like I got to understand that Joel is still getting settled, and Park is finally just becoming the leader.
It looked good,
They both have to get used to that. And so, we got to take those things into account heading into the season. But I'm going to stick with my 6-6 prediction for the seniors. I want them to go out and get that.
Yeah, that'd be good for them. I don't know if I'm all. You say you're hopeful because you're an Iowa State fan. I'm a pessimist because I'm an Iowa State fan. That's just how it has happened, how it's brought up like that.
I can't blame you.
Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be a tough year, but there's definitely some points in the schedule where they're going to have to go on at least one pretty big winning streak if they want to get to those 6 wins and go bowling. But who knows? If you get 5 wins now, there's so many bowls now, you can possibly get into a bowl with 5 wins, especially with how well Iowa State's fans travel. They'd definitely be considered with 5 wins to be potentially going to a bowl. But looking at some other headlines and some upcoming things in Iowa State athletics for all of you out there, Obviously, softball losing a heartbreaker tonight against Drake. That was in Des Moines, losing 3-2 there after 4 straight scoreless innings. After jumping out in the lead, could not get it done there. Track and field will be at the Brian Clay Invitational. That's coming up this weekend. Gymnastics, you've got one gymnast still competing. Haley Young will be competing in the NCAA Championship. That will be in St. Louis, Missouri. You can catch that on ESPN2 or watch ESPN. That'll be coming up on the 14th, starting at noon. Softball has a home series, finally back at home. They'll take on the Oklahoma State Cowgirls over at the Cyclone Sports Complex. One game on Friday, one game looking for 2 games on Saturday, if I'm not mistaken. And then, of course, volleyball, even getting some volleyball action in. The Iowa State Spring Tournament will be happening in Hilton Coliseum. That'll start at 10 a.m. on the 15th. That is your Cyclone headlines, and that's all we've got here for this edition of Cyclone InCYders. So for Ben Olson, I'm Taylor Mankle, wishing you all a peaceful good night.